Okay, let's think about this for a second. We're always told we should defend our beliefs, right? Build this big, strong fortress around our faith. But what if that fortress is actually made of glass? What if the very thing you're doing to protect your faith is the thing that makes it most likely to shatter? It's a pretty wild idea. So let's dig in. Yeah, that's the central question we're tackling. Can the very act of defending your faith somehow make it weaker? It sounds backward, I know, but the idea is that certain ways of defending belief, what we call apologetics, might not be building a strong fortress at all. Instead, you might be building a fragile little glass house, the kind that just completely shatters the first time a real challenge comes along. And here's where that critique really comes from. It's an argument made by C.J. Cornthwaite, and it goes something like this. That popular kind of bumper sticker style apologetics is actually dangerous. Why? Because it tries to shield believers from really tough questions by giving them these super simple, easy answers. So what happens? Well, when someone who's only ever heard those simple slogans runs into a real, serious intellectual challenge, their whole belief system can just collapse because it was never built to handle any real pressure. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at what a dangerous defense even is. Then, we'll compare what we're calling brittle faith versus robust faith. We'll touch on how scholars read scripture, and then, this is the big part, we'll hit 3 key refutations to this whole danger idea. And finally, we'll talk about how to get from a fragile faith to an anti-fragile one. Okay, section 1, a dangerous defense. Look, to be fair, that critique we just mentioned, it's not totally wrong. It actually has a pretty good point, but only when we're talking about a very specific kind of faith. We're going to call this brittle faith, and it's really at the heart of the problem. So what is a brittle faith? Well, think of it like a beautiful crystal vase. It looks solid, right? It's built on these claims that sound super simple and strong, but they don't have any real depth. The second it gets tapped by the hard reality of, say, history or textual criticism or philosophy, the whole thing just shatters. And that right there is how you get a crisis of faith. And you see this in the real world all the time. People are taught these super oversimplified absolute claims. You know the ones. The Bible has never changed, not one word. Or the Gospels are like perfect chronological transcripts. Or there are absolutely no contradictions in Scripture. But these are really brittle shields. The second that person learns about, say, the complexities of ancient manuscripts or the different literary styles of the Gospel writers, those simple shields just break. And it sets them up for a major faith crisis when they realize the truth is a whole lot more complex. Okay, so that brings us right to the main event here, the huge difference between brittle faith and robust faith. See, the problem isn't the act of defending your belief. It's all about how you do it. It really boils down to 2 totally different ways of thinking about this. And this slide just lays it all out. On one side, you've got what you could call folk or brittle apologetics. This is the world of bumper sticker slogans. It totally ignores things like textual variants, avoids the tough questions, and the end result is a super fragile faith. But on the other side, you have robust or anti-fragile apologetics. And this approach, it dives right into the complexity. It's historically informed, it looks challenges straight in the eye, and it builds a faith that's genuinely resilient. So here's the key takeaway. The solution to bad, brittle apologetics isn't to just stop defending faith entirely. No way. It's to build better, smarter defenses. The goal is to move away from a faith that's scared of questions to one that actually gets stronger because of them. All right, so how do we actually do this? What does a robust approach look like when you're, say, reading the Bible? Well, a robust faith isn't afraid of the scholarly details. It looks at the complexities of Scripture and doesn't immediately freak out and assume it's all fiction. It's all about having the right tools to understand what you're reading. You know, a lot of the critiques out there really come from one simple mistake. People read an ancient text with modern expectations. It's like they're expecting a police report with perfect chronological precision. But an ancient biography, what scholars call a bio, played by different rules. Authors back then would often arrange stories by theme, not just by time, because they were trying to make a theological point. And get this, recognizing that isn't admitting there's an error. It's just, understanding what the author was actually trying to do. And this flows right into this big idea called dual authorship. The classic Christian view has always been that Scripture is somehow fully divine and fully human at the same time. So when you see Paul's unique, fiery personality or Luke's careful historical style, that's not a problem you have to explain away. Those human fingerprints are seen as the very method God used to communicate. They're a feature, not a bug, Okay, now we're getting to the heart of it. For anyone who still thinks that defending your faith is just plain dangerous, we've got 3 solid refutations that show why a robust, honest approach isn't dangerous at all. In fact, it's protective. First up is what's called the inoculation argument. And it's just like a vaccine. A vaccine gives your body a weakened form of a virus so it can learn how to fight it off, right? Well, good apologetics does the exact same thing for faith. It introduces believers to the tough questions, things like violence in the Old Testament or apparent contradictions. But it does it in a safe, controlled environment. This gives them a chance to actually think through the challenge and build a response, which makes their faith way stronger and more resilient for when they eventually hear the full-strength version of that argument out in the wild. And that's the key difference right there. The brittle approach is all about isolation. It tries to create this sterile bubble to keep believers away from any challenges. But we all know what happens to bubbles. They pop. A robust approach, on the other hand, is about inoculation. It's like putting on armor. It prepares you for the real world of ideas, making you strong instead of keeping you fragile. Okay, refutation number 2. This one takes on a really common myth. The idea that skeptical scholars are totally neutral and objective, while Christian scholars are just inherently biased. But the truth is, nobody is neutral. There's no such thing as a truly neutral perspective. Every single scholar, whether they're religious or not, starts with a set of assumptions that shapes how they see everything. And here's a perfect example. Let's say a scholar starts with the philosophical assumption that dead men don't rise. It's just impossible in their worldview. Well, if that's your starting point, then it doesn't matter how much historical evidence you see for the resurrection, you're never going to be convinced. You're forced by your own presuppositions to explain it all away as a legend, or hallucination, or a metaphor. The conclusion was decided before you even looked at the evidence. And this is exactly why a robust defense isn't dangerous. It's empowering. It gives you the tools to not just passively listen to a critic, but to actually turn the tables and critique the critic. You can start asking questions like, hey, what are your starting assumptions? What biases might be shaping your conclusions? All of a sudden, the intellectual playing field is completely level. And finally, refutation number 3 is just simple, real-world evidence. I mean, think about it. If digging into all the complex, messy facts of history and biblical studies always destroyed faith, then there wouldn't be any Christian experts in those fields, right? They wouldn't exist. But of course they do. You've got brilliant scholars like N.T. Wright, Richard Bauckham, Craig Keener, Lydia McGrew. These folks know every textual variant and historical problem inside and out, way better than most critics, and yet they remain devout Christians. So let's wrap this all up. At the end of the day, the real question isn't if we should defend our beliefs, it's how we should do it. The goal is to move from a faith that's fragile to one that's genuinely anti-fragile. A faith that doesn't just survive challenges, but one that actually gets stronger because of them. And this table here just makes it crystal clear. You've got 2 paths. The dangerous path hides from difficult facts, it relies on simple slogans, and the outcome is a fragile crystal faith that just shatters. But the other path, the protective and robust one, engages with those hard facts. Its foundation is historically informed theology, and the outcome is like a living root system that only grows stronger as it pushes through that tough soil. And really, that's the ultimate takeaway. The real goal of good Christian apologetics isn't to build some kind of protective shield around believers. It's to equip them, to strengthen them. It's not about trying to preserve a fragile crystal that can't be touched. It's about nurturing a living root that grows deeper and stronger through the complex, challenging, and honestly fascinating soil of history and philosophy. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. We've seen how 2 people can look at the exact same set of facts and come to completely different conclusions. So, what's more important? The evidence you encounter or the framework you use to interpret it? Something to think about. Thanks for watching.